The US has a clear divide of anti versus pro-gun culture. On one hand, guns are seen to contribute towards the issues regarding public safety, and on the other hand, guns are seen to be an essential tool for protecting an individual and the safety of their family. According to a survey in 2017, the United States had a population of 326 million people, but at that time, the US also had around 393 million firearms, meaning that there were far more guns than people. With the US having an average of 120 gun deaths per year, it is important that there is increased awareness. With the ongoing argument that limiting access to guns will save lives and reduce crime, opponents insist that it would actually do the opposite, by preventing law-abiding citizens from defending themselves. There are many reasons why people choose to own guns, and these can vary from recreational use to criminal use. But one of the main factors why people choose to own guns is the ideology of protection. In the US, guns are much more commonly used for self-defense rather than for committing crimes. Guns do not even need to be fired to elicit protection. They can simply be used as a deterrent to discourage criminals from committing crimes and harming others. Statistics show that 31% of gun owners have used a gun in self-defense, and in nearly 82% of these cases, the gun was never even fired. For gun owners, carrying a firearm gives you the responsibility of protecting your family and friends and other people that are around you. The need for protection is influenced enormously by the perceived fear of threats. The US has a high crime rate, and the average police response time is approximately 10 minutes. Therefore, the fear of threat can be high, and the individuals want to be able to protect themselves from danger. Studies looking at the rationales for gun ownership found major contributors were fear of victimization and the perceived ineffectiveness of police protection. The power of fear is able to overpower all negative associations with gun ownership. For an individual, the protection of their family is their main priority and comes number one every time. Statistics show that gun ownership in rural areas is higher, predominantly in white middle-aged men who make an average salary of around $100,000 a year. While there may be other factors contributing to this increase in gun ownership, such as hunting or collecting, it indicates that this group has the highest perceived threat to their safety. Interestingly, this group also has the highest demographic of evening news channels.
People who are pro-guns are usually into certain hobbies, such as hunting, sport, or collecting. Hunting is a hobby that many advocates describe as being misunderstood. People who do not have a clear understanding of hunting see it as barbaric and believe hunters are just killing animals for fun. However, hunters argue that hunting for food is a more humane and environmentally friendly way to enjoy meat in comparison to mass farming. It is the duty of the hunter to have enough respect for their prey to avoid causing a slow and painful death. This means that the hunter will tend to wait until they have a clean target before pulling the trigger. Also, hunters tend to hunt animals that are overpopulated due to the lack of predators. Common prey for hunters is deer. In the early 1900s, there were estimated 500,000 white-tailed deer in the US. Today, it is estimated there are around 30 million. This is an increase of 6,000% in just over a century. Without controlling the population of white-tailed deer through regulated hunting, this leads to overpopulation, which has detrimental ecological effects on landscapes. Shooting, as a sport, has 3 different disciplines: rifle, shotgun, and pistol. In each discipline, athletes have to shoot targets to gain points. Shooting has been a qualified Olympic sport since 1896. Shooting is considered an intense sport that requires numerous different skills, including concentration, stamina, strength, and above all else, great hand-eye coordination. As with all sports, shooting has some great personal benefits. The focus and concentration required to shoot can help problem-solving skills in other situations. In most countries, to practice shooting as a sport, you must be a member of a club, which gives people the sense of community and belonging. Also, with more and more people spending time indoors, shooting gives people the opportunity to spend more time outdoors, which has been proven to boost psychological well-being. Just as people collect artwork, classic cars, and NFTs now, guns have their own group of enthusiasts who buy rare and antique guns. They do this for investment purposes and pride of ownership, just as somebody who would purchase an Aston Martin DB5 would. George Washington's saddle pistols were sold for $1,986,000 at auction in 2002. The buyer was the King Mellon Foundation, who then donated the pistols to the Fort Legionnaire Historic Site and Museum just outside of Pittsburgh. This is the most expensive purchase made in a historic gun auction.
The Second Amendment reads as follows: a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In modern day, it is referred to as an individual's right to carry and use arms for self-defense. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. This was signed in 1791, over 2 centuries ago. This amendment gives the citizens the right to defend themselves and their property without any restrictions from the government. But times have changed and the laws have not, and a lot of people are arguing that this amendment needs to be updated. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comment section below. Cases of accidental gun deaths are a major concern and at the forefront of the anti-gun community. Gun owners are thought to possess an optimism bias. An optimism bias is the tendency to overestimate good outcomes and underestimate bad outcomes. This makes it easy for gun owners to overlook the risks and dangers of holding a gun within the home. They believe that accidents simply won't happen to them. Studies found that men that own handguns are 8 times more likely to die of self-inflicted wounds than men that don't. And that women that own handguns are 35 times more likely to kill themselves with a gun. The 3 most common cases of accidental or unintentional shootings are a result of either playing with a gun, thinking the gun wasn't loaded, or hunting. In a fascinating paper by Jacqueline Diaz, she states, accidental gunshot deaths among children had jumped by 31% in the US during the start of the pandemic compared to a year earlier, with the trend continuing to worsen over the pandemic. This can be linked to a surge of gun sales at the start of the pandemic. Todd Cotter, a gun store owner, says his gun store has never seen a run-in like it has seen before. There was just an avalanche of new gun buyers for the first time. 40% of all gun sales at the start of the pandemic were from first-time gun buyers, and this was mainly driven by the fears of the coronavirus pandemic.
Mass shootings have become somewhat of an epidemic in the US. In 2021, there were a total of 13 mass shooting events, killing 74 people and injuring 61. Compare this to 20 years ago in 2001, where there were only 2 mass shooting events, killing 5 people. There has been a steady increase in these fatal events throughout the 21st century. Since the start of the millennia, there have been 1,165 deaths as a consequence of mass shootings in the US. The increase in mass shootings also correlates with the level of gun ownership in the US, which has steadily increased during the 21st century. The level of gun ownership correlates with the increase of mass shootings throughout the 21st century in the US. There have been various studies on mass shooting events and the effects of gun ownership in the US. Professor Simon Jackman states, after massacres in the United States, when it looks like the federal government might be about to take strong action to regulate gun ownership, gun owners typically respond by buying more guns and in particular buying more ammo. Also, a study by medical and healthcare researcher BMJ shows that a 10% increase in gun ownership led to a 35% increase in mass shootings. Some people argue that the issue with gun violence is people that control the guns and mental health issues. However, I have collated some stats that compare the US with a country with heavy gun restrictions, the UK. In the US, it is estimated 1 in 5 people suffer from mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar and PTSD, compared to the UK where it's estimated 1 in 6 people suffer from these issues. In the US, there were 19,400 homicides in 2020, with this figure expected to be higher in 2021. Whereas in the UK, there were 627 between June 2020 and June 2021. To make this a fair comparison, let's look at the amount of homicides per 100,000 people. In the US, this would be 5.89 homicides per 100,000 people, and in the UK, this is a much lower figure of 0.93. per 100,000 people. This is a massive difference considering the mental health issues in both countries are not too dissimilar. This raises the question, is the relaxed attitude towards firearms causing the higher rate of homicides in the US?
Guns are a big business. There are 8 million new small arms and 15 billion rounds of ammunition produced each year. The small arms trade is worth approximately $8.5 billion a year. Gun violence is particularly prevalent in Latin America, where easy access to firearms, weak regulation of laws, and a dysfunctional criminal justice system allow firearms violence to prevail. In El Salvador, 91.1% of all killings are by a use of a firearm. However, among wealthier and developed countries, the US is a huge outlier with firearm violence, with around 40,000 men, women, and children being killed with guns each year. The United States, with less than 5% of the world's population, has 46% of the world's civilian-owned guns. It ranks number 1 in firearms per capita.
Federal law requires background checks for only guns sold through licensed firearm dealers. This accounts for 78% of all gun sales in the United States. However, there are 25% or more sellers at gun shows that are not required to run background checks on potential buyers. This is nicknamed the gun show loophole. There have been proposals for universal background checks, which would require almost all firearm transactions in the United States to be recorded and go through the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This will close what is sometimes referred to as the private sale exemption. Universal background checks are not required by federal law, but there are at least 22 states and the District of Columbia that require some level of background checks for the private sale of firearms. Thank you for watching our video. We have tried to place a balanced argument on whether gun ownership is a good thing or a bad thing. Please let us know in the comments below whether you are anti-gun or pro-gun and your reasons why. Thanks again, and don't forget to like and subscribe.